myself, you know. And I've had enough of this rabble. Come on!
As the chaos spread, the star seemed doomed to unravel, and yet... there were those who stood in defiance of that fate.
The hour is come, creature. It's all or nothing.
But will our heroes deign to play their part? You took your time. 'Tis as we feared. The respite afforded this land was but fleeting. The end draweth nigh. Secrets to tell. Take care, my friend.
So, Charlian would keep its counsel while the world is lost to ruin.
It would. Come what may, we shall live on. We must.
Do as you must, then. But we scions will fight until the heavens fall, until our last breath.
The core song of Endwalker is unique among the themes in Final Fantasy XIV in that it approaches the lyrics from various perspectives, whereas prior themes were usually a single perspective. The first stanza, beginning with Heart of Ember, is from the perspective of light, or Heidelins. It is a singular entity and does not indicate a group, but an individual. The Heart of Ember could be a lot of things. It reminds me a lot of the Heart of Sabik, but in this case also has symbolic meaning that could mean the planet, the soul, or something suffusable with etheric polarity. The line "cooling, swiftly bleeding light" reminds me much of our Aether thermodynamics video, as light is analogous to cold. Bleeding light could also refer to Heidelin's losing strength over the millennia. Smoldering softly also denotes that while she is a primal of light, she is not pure light as we see on the first, and that through sundering the world, she was able to buy time for the now sundered inhabitants to research the true threat and eliminate it. By doing this, she was able to remove the source of power for the sound, even though it cost mankind their knowledge, memories, and longevity. Marching forward left behind could mean several things, but I tend to believe that this is referring to the inevitable passage of time, both marching forward but being unable to keep up, and eventually being left behind. The second stanza introduces another perspective, though whose is up for debate, but I believe it to be the inhabitants of the source, or perhaps the Scions specifically. The fire created by the clashing of shadows could refer to the probable upcoming Ascian civil war. The forgotten footfalls refers to those who came before, and laid the path we walk that have faded from memory. Grahatia's words come to mind. This tale too will fade with time, passing into legend as the world heals and moves on. There may come a day when you forget the faces and voices of those you have met along the way. On that day, I bid you remember this. You stand where you stand by virtue of the road you walked to get here. While the tide may wash away the footsteps behind us, they were walked nonetheless, regardless of whether or not they are remembered. The fire being repaid indicates a reciprocation for the fire given. Fire in this case not being the elemental conquest with an affinity for darkness, but a metaphorical fire resulting from conflict. For our echoes begin to fade indicates that there's a limited amount of time to accomplish these things. Unlike the eternal Heidelin and the Ascians, this indicates an ephemeral existence, including the focus on memory and forgetting within this stanza. Once again, we return to the Heart of Ember and the Autumn Tide. Autumn Tide is a 16th century term for autumn, which could also be interpreted as twilight or an ending. The most recent use of this term was in a book by John Huizinga called Autumn Tide of the Middle Ages, detailing the ending of the Middle Ages. Previously called the waning of the Middle Ages, this leads me to believe that this is very much describing the Heart of Ember's end. The next line, burning brightly, hot and white, indicates that this is an extremely hot perspective. Once again, looking at the thermodynamics video, this solidifies this as the perspective of darkness. Zodiark and the Ascians are a perfect fit for this, and the next line, kindred severed, neverwhere, solidifies this as the Ascians' perspective, as they are trying to restore their sundered people, whose souls were severed, but exist, but not as they were, within Zodiark. The word neverwhere denotes not only location, but in time. They do not exist anywhere physically as a whole, and through the fading of memory, it is as though they never were. There is also a book by Neil Gaiman called Neverwhere, where a man becomes invisible to all but one person, and they journey to the underworld. The final line, sorrow's silence we needn't bear, could refer to the end of the Ascians working in the shadows and starting to work openly. It could also mean that the remaining sundered Ascians are all like Fandaniel and tired of the constant struggle of being forced to implement the rejoinings and just want to be free of the cycle. Stories sown along the way, tales of loss and fire and faith. These two lines sum up the first three stanzas. These are all stories that have been told in the aftermath of Heidelin's blow. The tale of loss of paradise by the ancients and Zodiark. The tale of fire experienced by the inhabitants of the Source at the mercy of both godlike primals throughout the millennia. And the tale of faith borne by the followers of Heidelin. At this point, we cut from Endwalker to Dragonspeak. While they were not part of the ancient world, their journey and arrangement with Heidelin have made them part of the tale of the Source specifically. These lines are similar to the ones in Heavensward. Like Emmett Selk's lines in the trailer though, they are slightly different now. These lines are now a call to action, rousing the dragons to war to stave off the coming death rather than to vengeance. There are some other variations and structure alterations as well, such as Ros an Keen compared to Ros an Keen Alana. The prior, from Heavensward, translates to My Brother's Wake, but the Endwalker version is All My Brother's Wake, followed by an enhancer, which translates to an urgent call to action. There isn't a good way to translate this into English, as it lacks many of these types of modifiers, but they are very prevalent in other languages. The best way I could illustrate this is to say, wake up versus wake the fuck up. From there, we move to Stormblood lyrics, but are very descriptive of Fandaniel. The storm of blood denoting the final days and the Ascians who have been slain, and the resulting world that has come about because of it. Thunder Stilled is the death of the Unsundered. Thunderer is the name of the Ascian battle theme, and by killing or stilling those behind the thunder, it has left Fandaniel with a feeling that his job has been completed and he no longer needs to abide by their wishes. His oath has been fulfilled. They're dead after all, and he just wants to be free. The next few lines could be interpreted as individually or by line. Born in blood, stained in red could refer to Xenos, whose backstory is still largely unknown, but it is speculated that Emmett Selk did something to him that resulted in his current personality. We continue to see the call and response, and all the responses are about wanting to see tomorrow and forging ahead. This is in direct contrast to the Edge, where the Ancients were trying their hardest to stave off tomorrow. The irony here is that the current lines are asking for darkness by bringing about change in another day, and the Ancients were asking for light by trying to keep everything the same. From here, we move into Charlayan, singing about the Song of Hope. This is yet another sound reference in this game. The echo, a symphony, the chorus, the dragon song, the sound, all related to auditory vibration. Here we hear the Song of Hope, obviously female and either singing of Vana or Hydaelyn. It references wind, another dark aspected conquest element, but this is a song about the light, standing in the darkness, hanging fast to the vows made in the ancient world, despite forgetting the original reason for them. The wings of hope carry the song higher and higher again, and we see a mention of a chorus rising. Then we move to the lines from Shadowbringers until we get to where the two-toned echoes are tumbling to, and return to Endwalker proper, which is the Never, which is referenced earlier as the Neverwhere. Here, we return to Endwalker, and finally, Azem's perspective. Taking steps into the future, fate ever going with them with every step they take, forging ahead and shaping fate regardless of the adversity they face throughout the years. It is perspective of not being alone, which is almost emblematic of Azem. They were never alone. We see a call and response, but this time, it's Azem responding to another, telling them that they will be there in times of need, and the chorus of all those who came before, guiding those who come after.